So these are the 5 stages of practice stagnation that I've identified through a tremendous amount of experience in 7 limiting growth factors. I'd say easily 97 to 99% of the chiropractors fit right into these categories. I've seen it over and over. So now the good and bad news about this is if you don't even know that there's 5 different stages of a chiropractic practice and each one of them has totally different um, issues, limiting stagnation issues, you won't even know what to pay attention to. You'll just keep thinking new patients, new patients, new patients, new patients. No, that is not always the problem. And then the 7 limiting growth factors. So these two go hand in hand. So let's walk through this, and then we're going to go into each one of these specifically. We're going to break these down individually and go into each one of them. Okay. And we're going to spend some time talking about these growth factors. And then remember, when we talk about them, it's not black or white. It's not 100% to nothing. That's not what it is. It's back to the 80-20 rule. In other words, there could be all of these factors or 3 or 4 of these factors that are an issue to some degree. But overwhelmingly, one of them is the issue at that stage of your practice. One of them. Okay? And that's what you have to pay attention to. You got to pay attention to. Number one, where am I at in my practice? What stage am I? That tells you what you need to do. That's the whole flow chart. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here. And let me just identify this. So when you start a practice, people generally tap out around 0 to 40 visits for different reasons. I'm going to go into the different reasons here. But when we look at the 7 limiting growth factors, so let's go ahead and just talk about this a little bit and go, there's 7 common limiting growth factors, and they're different for each stage of the business. Okay. So there's space issues, labor issues, equipment, knowledge, skill, motivation, staff management, and systems. Those are 7 systems. I pretty much found that those are the 7 systems that will limit you. And then there's 5 stages of a practice. So there's starting a practice, and I've identified it by patient visits. I see a lot of chiropractors get stuck under 40 visits a week, and there's a reason why. And then I see a lot of chiropractors get stuck at 60 to 80 patient visits a week. Okay. Now, these are good ranges, by the way. These are pretty good ranges. So, it might be 59, 55, 89, 90, whatever, but these are really, really good, accurate ranges, what I've seen over the years practicing and the stagnation, what's causing it. Now, the reason, obviously, we're pointing this out is when we go into each one of these, you need to look at it. Obviously, the best thing to do first is go, well, where am I at? And that's what you should work on first. Where are you at? Where am I at in the practice? And then which of the limiting growth factors is my problem? And then out of those 7, which one is the main problem? Because until you fix that, you'll never grow. That will be your limiting factor, period. And most doctors don't even know what it is. They're running blind. And that's why. And here's the clue of how you know you're running blind. Nothing's changed in the last year. You haven't increased your income or passive income in the last year. And we're going to be liberal and say a year. I always say go quarter to quarter. Go 1 quarter. And if you have not eliminated a negative or put something in a system in place for growth, in other words, limiting the most major limiting factor in that quarter, if you have not eliminated it, or if you have not put in place a system that will help you grow in the next quarter, or did your income grow that quarter? Those are the 3 things you should always be looking at. Because if none of those 3 happened, you're stagnating. You're going nowhere. You're on the rat wheel. And whatever you're at, project it out the rest of your career. That's where you're at. That's it. That's your income. Figure out what you want to do with it. That's your time. That's your income. Okay? None of that has to stay the same. Absolutely none of it. So that's what we're doing, is helping to narrow this down. So I'm going to be general, and then we're going to go specific. So um, those are the stages of the practice with visits. I've seen patient visits 60 to 80 patient visits. I've seen a lot of stagnation, like 120 to 130 patient visits. Um, a lot stagnation at 180 to 220, and I have people who can't get past that, and they can't leverage off. Um, I remember one doctor, we tried and tried it out. He had what's called a psychographic. He had a psychological barrier. He just couldn't do it. I mean, he just couldn't do it. I mean, it's sometimes you guys might be able to relate when you're a kid. If if you ate a certain kind of food, you got sick, and then you didn't like that food anymore, or when you smelled it, as an adult, you got sick. And that's kind of what happened with him. It was all psychological, and it was a shame because he had way more potential than his limiting factor. And but anyway, moving forward. So those are the 5 areas of practice growth: starting a practice, getting from 0 to 40. And I'll just tell you the limiting factors and the main ones in all of these, all the way through not practicing and then managing and training. I had to learn how to be a manager trainer. That was difficult to let go. Nobody told me how difficult that was going to be. That was hard. But I also realized how much the quality of my life was going to suffer by not being able to let go, and I was going to be stuck in my office, and how much it was going to limit my income. Because if it was me doing the work, I just limited the heck out of my income. My passive income through associate doctors and real estate limited my time and money. So that was not acceptable. See, it was more painful for me to see the future and not have my freedom and have limited income 5, 10, 20 years down the road. That was way more painful than how difficult it was to let go. And I'm telling you, it was difficult to let go. It's hard when you build a practice to let go. Let go meaning hiring and training associate doctors and managing them. And essentially, you're not practicing anymore. It's not easy, but it can be done. And it has to be done if you want a higher quality of life. That's for sure.